BravOGs here, where we mention it all, so pay attention, please, and be cool. Don't be all like uncool. Hello, everybody. I am back solo again this week, so I'm just gonna be, doing my recap, doing my thing. So I just want to start off. I know that when I do my recaps, it's basically just Vanderpump Rules, SummerHouse, Valley, stuff like that, but BravOGs encompasses all the shows. So I'm going to start by just going off a couple hot topics the past two to 3 weeks, I'd say, things that have just come up about Bravo in recent weeks, and just want to kind of throw them out there. I'm not going to really talk too much about them, but just mention that these are some of the things that are going around in the Bravo universe right now. So, starting off hot with some Sloppy Joe. Here we go. Recently, Joe did a live, I believe it was on Instagram, but she was just, in my opinion, making a fool out of herself. I know there was a lot of people out there based on the last couple of episodes that were really feeling bad for Joe with the whole like Schwartz situation. But I feel like if you were one of those Joe apologists and really felt bad for her, I kind of feel like you may have changed your opinion if you did see this live, just because she was quite embarrassing. I mean, that's pretty much on brand for Joe, but just not, I don't know, just talking about how she's basically still in love with Schwartz and whatever. So anyway, I was just wondering if anyone still felt bad for her after she did that live. If you haven't seen it, you can go check out some clips probably on Instagram or go check it out. Or I know a lot of people on TikTok made videos and snippets of it. So I was never a fan of Joe. Yes, I felt a little bit bad for her, but after seeing this Instagram live thing, not my cup of tea. Okay, so I also heard in the past couple weeks, everyone's kind of waiting for the Vanderpump Rules reunion to see, because Lala has been going on a rampant press tour anywhere she can get her opinion out there, whether it's podcasts, Amazon Lives, what have not. But recently it came out, and I believe it was on Sandoval's podcast, or he was on a podcast, whatever, but Sandoval referenced Lala being the MVP of the reunion. Need I say more? If Sandoval thinks you are the most valuable person at this upcoming reunion that we're going to see, Lala, I think, is going to have a lot to answer for. And, she is on her pregnancy journey. That's great for her, whatever. But that aside, the fact that Sandoval is backing her 100% about the things that she said at the reunion, oh God, it makes my stomach hurt just waiting for this reunion, because, and it's just like very icky that Lala has since come out and said that she does not regret anything she said this past season, especially at the reunion, but yet she's also contradicting herself, crying on her Amazon Live saying, oh, the feedback's so harsh and people are being really mean, but I don't regret any of it. So, I was always a fan of Lala, but this season, no. Absolutely not. I don't like her behavior. I think she's a shitty friend. And anyway, in the world of Real Housewives, we had some news of some firings from the Beverly Hills Housewives cast. Crystal and Anne Marie. It has been said that they will not be returning next season, and I'm glad Anne Marie is not coming back. I don't think she brought anything. I think she's not relevant at all and was not a good addition. Crystal, I didn't really like her, or I didn't really not like her, but, she was just kind of there. She brought it a little bit more this past season, but still, I think, we could get someone a little bit more something. I don't know. And then it's been said that Dorit's kind of on the brink. We don't know if she'll be back. Do you guys want her back? I don't know. She's always been kind of I don't know. So we'll see. And then the word on the streets, the Beverly Hills streets, is that apparently Kyle's being told that if she doesn't divulge like what's going on with her and Morgan's like relationship, her diamond is in jeopardy. And I mean, in a way, I think that's kind of fair. She's kind of like strung us all along for the whole last year about are they, aren't they, doesn't really ever make a statement about it one way or the other. It's been some time since her and Mauricio have been separated, and I get it. It's like she's probably just figuring out, she's been in this relationship with Mauricio for like decades, and now she's finally just kind of on her own now. And so I get that if she doesn't want to put a label on anything, but I think it's kind of like time is like shit or get off the pot. Like either admit something's going on or not. So we'll see what plays out with that. The Valley It's been said that Jax and his publicist are at it again. Brittany Cartwright, which is Jax's separated wife, has unfollowed Jax and his publicist, who is also Brittany's publicist. So, very messy. I wouldn't be surprised if Jax hooked up with her. Even seeing these episodes of The Valley, Jax talks so poorly to Brittany and about Brittany, and it very much triggers me because, after my sons were born, I went through postpartum depression and, even, it doesn't even have to be depression, just struggles with postpartum. And I think a lot of women go through that, and I wouldn't be surprised if Brittany is going through that as well. And the way Jax, talks to her, it just makes my stomach curdle. And I don't like to watch that. So I think Brittany deserves better. Yes, she shouldn't have been with Jax. She shouldn't have married him. But, people make decisions. They try to stick with them. And people continue to just show you who they are. So anyway, The Real Housewives of New Jersey is starting soon. How good is this season going to be? I mean, it looks pretty juicy. I know that Jennifer Aiden is going to bring the drama. And it looks like Danielle is going to be bringing the drama as well. But the whole Melissa, Teresa not talking, that'll be kind of interesting to see how that plays out, because obviously they're, in gatherings all the time. They're at the same events, a lot of intimate events too with just the cast. So that's going to be really interesting. I don't think it's sustainable that they're both on the show. But I don't know. We'll see how it plays out with them not interacting at all, but yet always being in the same room. So. And then just a few days ago, I don't know how true this is, but there's another rumor that Lindsay Hubbard from SummerHouse, who just ended, her engagement with Carl, or I guess Carl ended their engagement, the word on the street is that she's preggers. So, if this is true, I'm sure it's in the very early stages. So I guess we'll just wait and see the next couple weeks if anything comes out about that. So, I mean, if she is, that's great. I'm happy for her. This is what she's always wanted. But Lindsay as a person just also doesn't sit very well with me. But that doesn't mean I don't wish her happiness and hope she gets what she wants out of life. However, at the same time, not destroying the partner that she's with. Alrighty, let's get into the recappy caps. So I'm going to start with Vanderpump because I always have the most to say about it. So I'm actually going to be covering the last 3 episodes. So the first episode I'm going to talk about is episode 12, How Do You Like Them Apples? So this episode starts off with Sheena shooting her new music video. Ariana and Lala came to be in the video and support her. And this is the episode where Raquel, whatever, her infamous first podcast interview with Bethany Frankel, reverberates throughout the group, leaving them stunned, for lack of a better word, of all the topics that Raquel has openly discussed with Bethany. And, might I add, has a very unique spin on some things. So mind you, this interview, to me, was kind of like the female version of the first interview that Sandoval had done with Howie Mandel. I mean, Howie and Bethany Frankel are admittedly not VPR watchers, and were not, in my opinion, the least bit qualified to be interviewing these individuals based on the series of events that occurred, and also would not be really holding either one of these dipshits accountable during the interviews. So just wanted to state that before. So Raquel stated that she, on this podcast interview with Bethany, that she was never close friends with Ariana. And in Ariana's confessional, obviously they had all kind of heard bits and pieces of Raquel's, interview with Bethany. And Ariana contradicted Raquel's claim. She said, Rachel and I spent a ton of time together. When she says that we weren't that good of friends, it's either her telling herself that just so that she feels better about what she did, or it's her saying, I really didn't think fucking shit about Ariana, she said. So Vanderpump shows a flashback to last season of Raquel stating, these are my true core people. These are my forever friends. And she was referring to Ariana. So that was just interesting. So also during this interaction, Lala asked to use Ariana's house in order to host her sperm donor selection party. And it was just so ironic to me because Lala was saying, obviously since this baby is going to be artificially inseminated, she wanted a loving, welcoming environment to essentially incept this baby, and because it wouldn't be brought into the world the traditional way of, 2 people making love and that kind of loving environment. So it was just really odd to me because, first of all, Lala's been talking major shit about Ariana still being in that house, but, if Lala needs something, i.e. Ariana's house for a party she wants to host, she has no problem asking to use it. But the other thing that was very ironic to me was that like this the house that Ariana and Tom share currently at this time was not a loving environment. There was probably a lot of negative energy, a lot of tension, not to mention a lot of clutter, but it was just not the right, like if that's the kind of environment Lala was going for, it was just, I think, really in poor taste that she would even ask to have it at her house. So I thought that was kind of weird. But so then, throughout the episode, Sandoval is acting like he is so hurt that Raquel was saying all this stuff about him and that Raquel was saying that she was never in love with Sandoval. And it's just so ironic and laughable at the same time. This entire time that Sandoval's crying his sad tears about how Raquel doesn't love him and ghosted him and all this stuff, even before this podcast interview came out of Raquel, this entire time, while Raquel was still in treatment, he was hitting on girls, inviting randos over for his pool parties at his house, like hitting on girls at bars, going to singles mixers. I mean, also paparazzi, was spotting him with several different women in real time while Raquel was still like not even out of the treatment center. So for him to try to peddle this narrative that he's just so heartbroken because he was so in love is just complete bullshit. But the kicker here was saying that Sandoval was saying Raquel just used him and threw him away, and he's just so sad about it. I'm sorry, sir. That is exactly what you did to Ariana, except times a million. Like, are you kidding me? Why are you so upset about your mistress when you just lost an amazing person? I mean, I'm so tired of seeing him cry and be so hurt by Raquel. Like, what about the decade-long relationship you had with Ariana? So later in the episode, Schwartz tries to kind of tell Lisa that, Tom is really hurting by the things Raquel was saying on the podcast. And Lisa responds like, who cares? And this was just so funny to me because this is literally the same woman practically begging the castmates to forgive Sandoval and move on for Tom's sake because he's suicidal just a mere weeks prior. And now she's saying, who cares now that like the hardcore evidence is out there and Rachel is finally saying her piece. And it was just so ironic. Oy. So another major point about this whole episode, the truth finally comes out about the house situation between Tom and Ariana. So Tom has been peddling this narrative that he has, offered to buy Ariana out of the house and it was for all of this money. And this episode, we come to find out that Ariana's team responded to Tom's initial offer to buy her out, after Ariana got all of her ducks in a row, inventoried all their belongings in the house that she either purchased or they had purchased together, and in turn accepted his offer. However, Sandoval now wants to say that he's having second thoughts about how he'll be able to afford it. I mean, he's been trying to spin it this whole time that Ariana took too long to respond, and now he's not sure about his finances. I'm sorry, but does anyone believe that 2 months prior that he was financially capable of buying her out of their multi-million-dollar home? I mean, we all know Tom is irrational and impulsive and clearly does not think anything through that is worth value. Not only this house, but also his relationship, his personal life, all the things that happened as, like a butterfly effect to what him and Raquel did. So I totally think this was like vindication for Ariana, at least a little bit, because Tom has just been peddling this narrative this whole time that it's Ariana's fault. She's not responding. Well, she did, and she accepted what you offered, and now you're reneging. So I thought that was just so Sandoval. So then later, Sheena and Brock come over to Ariana's house to help her, get organized and clean up a bit. Sheena explains that your environment can be a reflection of your mental health, and she just can't feel okay knowing that the mess Ariana is living in and how it's affecting her mental health. I get what Sheena's saying because I do think your environment is a reflection of your mental health in a lot of ways, but what about the point of your supposed best friend and her lackey of a husband talking relentless shit about Ariana behind her back and trying so desperately to build your friendship back up with the one person that caused all of this turmoil? What do you think that has done and will do to Ariana's mental health? That, I think, would affect Ariana more than living in material chaos, especially given her recent loyalty betrayal. She already had to deal with it with Tom and Raquel, but after this season airs and she sees all of the shit that Sheena and Brock and Lala are talking about her, that should worry Sheena more about Ariana's mental health than living in some clutter at home, especially when she knows that she's going to be moving out anyway. So then the highlight of this entire episode, James meets up with Tom Sandoval, and because Sandoval asked James to be like an opener at one of Sandoval's band's gigs. So James meets up with Tom at his band rehearsal to talk about it. And this exchange was probably the best scene of the entire season thus far. James is talking to Tom about, the podcast of Raquel and asks, how he's doing in light of all the info that's come out. And Tom does not know his audience. He is trying to gain sympathy from James, who, mind you, is also Raquel's ex-fiancé. And so James is seeing right through this. He's not having it. And he's telling Tom, like, you guys weren't even in love. And he called it just a 6-month fuck fest. And Tom tries to, like, retaliate immediately by trying to throw digs at James and saying that, oh, well, when she gave you that ultimatum about your drinking years ago, she gave that to you because she couldn't think that you could do it. To which James retorts, well, she also said she was just getting with you because she wasn't over me. So I wouldn't think too much about that. Boom. Boom. So obviously things start to get a little bit more heated between them. Tom continues to try and like play victim, saying that, oh, him and Raquel were in love. And James claps back being like, what you had with Ariana was true love. And you spent years looking into my eyes telling me so. And Tom responds by, you don't know what you're talking about, like just trying to negate any kind of reality. So things continue to get heated, but James is totally taking the high road while also trying to bring Sandoval like back to reality. Like James is absolutely the MVP of this season and the voice of reason. And he also did it while not bad talking Raquel, really. So like James has come so far, in my opinion. But anyway, this conversation ends with James saying, I'm not opening for you. I'm on to bigger and better things. And basically your band is a joke. And of course, James starts to walk away, and Sandoval's got to get that dig in, that last dig. So Sandoval responds by saying, under his breath, just go push some buttons on your laptop, because James is a DJ. And, like, good one, Sandoval. Like, oh, by the way, James just pushed buttons at arguably the most popular music festival in the U.S. this past month at Coachella. So if you want to talk about poetic justice, that is the definition. So later, Sandoval and Schwartz meet up at Sandoval's house. And, they were just kind of talking about the whole house situation. And, something that really irked me, Sandoval claimed that he was just going to take his time responding to Ariana's email about, the house situation just so he could, hang out longer with Maya. And Maya is their, I'm going to say shared dog, but I think we all know that Ariana is the primary caretaker. And mind you, this is the same Maya that Sandoval accidentally locked in Ariana's room, which required Maya to have an emergency vet visit after eating wooden skewers. And not only that, Sandoval had no fucking remorse about this situation and the dog essentially almost dying. And, this is just another example of yet again Sandoval using a female to fulfill his pathetic needs and wants. So anyway, Sandoval proposes to Schwartz that Schwartz, moves in with him so Sandoval can still remain in the house. My jaw hit the floor. Just move the fuck out. Move the fuck out. Just go. But I have a theory. I think the reason that Tom is acting more heartbroken by this Raquel ghosting him, because I really think that in his mind he thought he would still have enough manipulation over Raquel to convince her to move in with him once she was out of rehab. But now that Raquel has made it clear she is no longer going to even associate herself with Tom, I think he started scrambling and spiraling to find someone to beg to live with him in order to keep his shame pad. I really, truly think that this is what is going on. So also in this episode, Lala had her sperm donor party, and she ended up having it at Lisa Vanderpump's house. So it was just the girls, and they all came. Lala had, the top 3 donors she was interested in, and everyone kind of voted and gave their feedback, and they did end up on a certain donor, which I think Lala said she was kind of leaning towards that one anyway. So that was cool. During this, though, Allie kind of pulled Katie aside. They were just chatting. And Allie had told Katie that, Lala's saying some stuff about how, Katie, you're unhappy. And she doesn't like that basically Katie is calling Lala out on her bullshit. in particularly when Lala admitted she was like hanging out with Joe, and Katie got upset about that. So at the end of the episode, they're having like a brunch at Tom Tom because Lisa Vanderpump is trying to incorporate more of like a food menu at Tom Tom ever since Pump had closed. So she just had like kind of like a soft launch for brunch and, obviously invited all of the cast members there. So the girls are obviously all sitting together, and it comes out that, Allie and Katie had this convo about Lala. And Katie calmly, very calmly, tries to work things out with Lala, saying, I'm not unhappy, like right from the horse's mouth. So stop trying to push this narrative that I'm miserable. And for all those people out there that are saying, oh, Lala never said Katie was miserable. She said she was unhappy. I mean, she's implying the exact same thing. And I think miserable and unhappy, especially according to Lala, are too similar to say that they're two different things. So Katie was 100% on point, saying that, like, Lala, you claim you're in your soft era, but you only apply that softness to people that are, number one, undeserving of it, and number two, not your real friends. So Lala tries to play this off that, oh, she just feels left out because Ariana and Katie have gotten so close and she doesn't know her place. Like, Ariana and Katie have been there for you, Lala, not only throughout this entire season thus far, but Lala, you were the one saying last year, you won't forget who was there for you and stood by you and your kid during the whole Randall scandal. So not sure if production is giving Lala some kind of like incentive to try and villainize the actual victims, Ariana and Katie, this season, or if Lala's just a plain old hypocritical bitch. I can't really tell, but I think it's a little bit of both. So the episode ended with Sheena approaching, obviously it was all the girls at one table and then Schwartz and Sandoval at a separate table. So Sheena came up to the Toms at brunch and mentioned that her new song had dropped, which references a line about Sandoval, even though the whole song that Sheena just did was kind of about Raquel and the whole affair. Regardless, Tom flips out on Sheena and walks out. And he, as he's walking out, trying to guilt Sheena into that she was like profiting off his misery. Like, please, Sandoval, you were referencing Raquel's name in your cover songs while on tour and while Raquel was still in rehab. So pot, meet kettle. And, oh, I think I understand why. It's because Sandoval wasn't actually profiting off of his band tour. Otherwise, I think we consider this situation apples to apples. Are on to the next episode. It's episode 13, and this episode is called the Jax Attack. So Jaxie Boy, as James likes to call him, is back again. He comes over to James's house to discuss hosting an upcoming brunch at Sir. So while they're just chatting and catching up, it's brought up that, Katie has repeated rumors that she has seen online that Jax has been unfaithful to Brittany, and this bothers Jax so badly. And he throws out two such random scenarios as to why Katie would do this. The first thing he throws out is that Katie is just making this up because she can't have sex with Jax. Are you kidding me? I think you could offer Katie all the money in the world and she would still not touch him with a 10-foot pole. And then his other scenario and dig, I guess, he was just saying, oh, that Katie's just bored that she has no other friends of Schwartz's that she can fuck, so she comes up with this stuff. I mean, Jax is just looking for somebody to blame. Like, Katie did not create the internet and did not have, like, hundreds of allegations that are out there of Jax cheating, like, somehow appear on the internet. So I think he just needs somebody to blame. Jax also discusses with James the fact that he will probably have to speak with Lisa Vanderpump about this hosting gig, but Jax has been, like, talking a lot of shit about Vanderpump in his recent podcasts and in the press, and James just advises Jax to be the bigger person and basically just apologize and bring her flowers and just be humble. So later on, we see how that plays out. So the next scene is Brittany, who, Jax's wife, comes over to Sheena's house to kind of catch up. And, we all know Brittany. She's been on several seasons of Vanderpump, so this wasn't like a new thing. But they come to just chat. And first of all, during this interaction, I noticed something. And Sheena was like putting makeup on Summer, her daughter, who is 2, maybe 3. I mean, I just thought that was like a little young to start like implementing those kind of like beauty standards on your daughter, but I don't know. I'm a boy mom. Maybe I just don't know, but I just thought it was kind of like, not okay to watch. I mean, it wasn't like she was getting her ready for like a dance recital or anything. She was literally just putting like mascara on Summer while they were talking. It was kind of weird. But anyway, Sheena ends up crying to Brittany, saying that, now that her and Brock have a kid and the aftermath of this whole Scandival thing, she's having all these intrusive thoughts about Brock and Lala hooking up. But it was very strange because, like, during this time, like, off the show, and when Scandival was, very fresh still, there was all of these rumors that were running rampant about Brock also having an affair with Raquel. Like, I never heard any kind of rumors about Brock and Lala, but Sheena is claiming to Brittany that, tons of people online have been, like, speculating that. So she's also saying that she couldn't imagine Brock, like, even cheating on her because they have a kid now. So it was just very also ironic to me that, like, you would think this situation would make Sheena, like, reflect on the origin of Vanderpump when Sheena was cheating with Eddie Cibrian, who was in fact married with 2 kids during this time to the infamous Brandi Glanville, who was on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills at the time, and how the show all started. So Brandi had 2 young kids during this whole, like, scandal with them. But true to Sheena form, even back then, this is like, 12, 14 years ago, Sheena tried to play victim in her conversation with Brandi in that situation, saying that Sheena felt betrayed because she never knew he had, like, a family and wife. Like, okay. The stalker of all stalkers, Sheena, had no idea this famous actor was married with kids? Okay. Okay. So then we cut to Sheena and Brock had their anniversary dinner together. They went out to dinner together, and during this dinner, Brock tries to explain to Sheena, like, why having a nanny is, like, a priority to him and should be a priority to both of them, so he can feel like he's, like, contributing financially and basically has a purpose in life. Sheena explains to him that, like, being a stay-at-home dad is giving their whole family, like, a purpose. Like, it eases Sheena's mind and her anxiety and allows her to be, like, the breadwinner. And Sheena also then states, have you ever thought that maybe this is your second chance at being a dad and you're going to be the best fucking dad to this kid? I mean, there are just so many things wrong with this perspective. Like, first of all, maybe Brock wants his own money in order to start paying back the back-owed child support for his original kids in Australia. Like, if Sheena is the only breadwinner, I'm pretty sure she's not going to give him her hard-earned money to pay to support his original family. Also, like, the way she worded this, it was so weird because it's like his 2 previous children, like, they didn't die or anything. Like, nothing happened to them besides their father just walking out of their lives and subsequently seemingly not having any sort of effort to build or rebuild relationships with them. Like, and I still cannot get over the fact that, like, his Brock's first daughter back in Australia, her name is Winter Sky, and Sheena asked to be induced on Winter's birthday. And not only that, they also gave their daughter the name Summer Moon. Like, you can't make this shit up. And it honestly makes Sheena look fucking diabolical. So anyway, the next part of this episode, the Toms go to get tattoos together. And this scene is just, for lack of a better word, sad to watch because they are trying so hard to act like they're 20, and it's just the most pathetic thing. But what's more pathetic is that Sandoval thinks Schwartz getting a tattoo is resemblance of a trashy midlife crisis. Like, how ironic, coming from the 41-year-old piece of shit that cheated on his 10-year relationship with one of her friends and one of his friend's ex-fiancés. But yet, Sandoval thinks getting a tattoo is trashy? Okay. But karma is with him in that moment as Sandoval's continuously trying to convince Schwartz to move in with him again, and he falls backwards out of his chair. Like, what a poetic scene. So then we skip to the brunch at SUR that Jax and James are hosting. So Jax comes to SUR with no flowers in hand and basically tries to go, like, head to head with Lisa Vanderpump. Like, Lisa made her disdain with his presence, like, very clear, and she was kind of upset that Jax kind of went over her head and asked, other people if he could have this hosting gig at SUR and completely, tried to skip right over Lisa. So Lisa then called Jax out for, like, talking trash about her on his podcast and in the press, and Jax basically gives her a half-ass apology and said he was just hurt because once he was off Vanderpump Rules, Lisa never checked in with him and basically wrote him off. I mean, are you surprised, Jax? You're a piece of shit. Anyway, Lisa lets him stay, and Jax does what he does best, goes right to gossiping. So Jax finds the girls that are at this brunch for Sir, and immediately lets Ariana know that Sandoval has asked Schwartz to move into their house so Sandoval could attempt to continue to live there, even though they do a flashback from like 5 minutes prior when Schwartz, you know, asked Jax basically not to say anything about the situation. So anyway, they do their thing, and then after the brunch, the gang heads back to James's house for kind of like a pool after party, including dipshit himself, Sandoval. So at this after party thing, Jax confronts Katie about the cheating rumors, and Katie flat out tells him, I didn't start the rumors, like, basically get over yourself. And Jax tries to act like he cares about his wife Brittany and tries to make it seem like this is the reason why he's so mad at Katie. He states that, it's messed up that Katie doesn't check in with Brittany, and Katie very plainly states, because I don't like you. Like, I don't want to associate myself with you, and it sucks that I'm not close with Brittany, basically, but, like, I don't want to know you or anything like that. I mean, Jax just continues to use Brittany as like collateral damage. I mean, he really doesn't give a shit about Brittany. He just needs something to kind of try to validate why he's so mad at Katie. So the night is kind of winding down, and Sandoval decides to confront Sheena again about, another attempt to profit off of his misery. And Sheena snaps at him, saying, now I have fucked up thoughts about Lala and Brock, like you did that, like you're the reason why I would even have these thoughts now. And just when you think it's over, like Sandoval stays true to himself and always tries to throw out one last dig when someone's walking away. And and basically tells Sheena, well, you've been the other woman before, like you basically have nothing to say. And Sheena pops off being like, that was when I was 21. That was years ago. I did my time for that. Like you're 41 and you're still doing this kind of shit. And things got really heated. And, I could go either way on this. Like I never want to, agree with Sandoval, but like, I don't know. I'm also not like a Sheena fan. So this interaction, I was just it was entertaining because I was like, oh, two assholes going at one another. Cool. But I mean, going off of this, there's obviously a pattern with Sandoval, like especially this season of like the aftermath of everything. I really feel like Sandoval thinks by like throwing daggers at other people and bringing up their past mistakes and like fuck ups in his mind, he feels like it might somehow lessen what he's done or at least chip away at the severity of his indiscretion and poor choices. But in reality, it does the complete opposite. It just makes him look pathetic and avoidant of any accountability by trying to justify or compare what he did. Like every single person has made mistakes on that show and have had experiences with, poor choices. However, the continuous deflection of his own actions is just exhausting. Like, at least everyone else can admit what they've done and kind of move on and kind of take it and learn. But, like, Tom can't even own it without, like, trying to take someone down with him. So, just a little side note to the rest of this episode. James got really emotional because he did not want to leave Hippie, their shared dog that he had with Raquel, because Allie was going to one of her friends' weddings in Ohio and they would be gone for a couple days. And usually James has his brother watch the dog, but his brother can't this time. So James, said that he is no longer going to go to the wedding. And obviously that upset Allie a little bit. But I don't know, like in a way I kind of understand, like James is honestly like, you can really tell he's very terrified of like losing Hippie again, and he really doesn't trust anyone besides like his brother or family watching Hippie just in case there is some kind of incident, like a biting incident again. But also he can't like not live his life with this fear, but maybe he just needs some time. And I don't know if I would miss my girlfriend's friend's wedding for this, but I do see both sides to this. But the one thing I was wondering, like, why couldn't like Katie or Schwartz like offer to watch Hippie during that time? Like, they're obviously both dog people. James is close with both of them now, and they both care about dogs and, split custody of their own dogs. So I don't get why, like, for the few days James would have been gone, like, I wonder why they wouldn't offer to, like, help James out so he could go by watching the dog. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's reasons. I thought that was a little weird. So also at this pool party, Schwartz pulls Ariana aside and like has a conversation with her, and usually Ariana's very like cold with Schwartz, saying, she wants nothing to do with him, but she was very open to talking with him. I mean, maybe Ariana's starting to be in her soft era, but Schwartz just wanted to come clean about Sandoval asking him to move in. And when Schwartz brought it up to Ariana, she was basically like, yeah, I already know, like Jax already, told me about it. And he was just like, oh my God, well, I don't think I'm going to, but like, what, what's your opinion about it? And I think Schwartz was super surprised to hear Ariana say like, look, as soon as I get like what the house is worth to me and like my fair share, like I don't care what he does with the house. So I thought that was really cool. Um, you know, so yeah. So that was the end of that episode. And
Okay, so this very last week's episode was episode 14, and this one is called For Old Tom's Sake. So it starts off, I love that Anne is now a something about her employee. Like, such a better job. Like, sometimes you just need that push to get out of a toxic environment, and then you get to be where you should be. So, anyway, Lisa comes in to something about her to kind of talk to Ariana and Katie about Penny's involvement. And Penny was kind of the cultivator chef expertise that they kind of hired. Lisa had recommended her. And so they had hired her, but I don't know. I don't like this Penny person. She just seems very like shady to me. Apparently Penny was telling Lisa Vanderpump that, she was upset with the girls because she was kind of assuming a partnership in this whole thing. And Ariana and Katie were kind of like, this is not a Three Musketeers thing. And if Ariana and Katie have learned anything, it's really not to trust someone who just wants to ride off your coattails, a la Sheena. But it also bugs me how Lisa just like assumed she knew the situation with the financial aspect from just hearing like Penny's opinion. Like Ariana and Katie made it very clear that they've offered Penny a more than reasonable salary for her expertise and a 10% of all the profits. So I just think it's really shady also that like I think it came out Penny and her husband, who's kind of a lawyer, like bought the domain name for something about her. Like Penny for your thoughts. I'd say cut ties. So later on in the episode, it's in preparation for Kyle Chan's like launch party in San Francisco. Kyle Chan had told Sheena that she could perform at it. So they have a kind of like a pre-meeting before they all head out of town, and Sheena's there obviously because she's going to go performing to go over logistics and stuff. And surprise, surprise, Tom Sandoval shows up to help out in any way he can, man, because that's what Tom does best, favors. So you can be indebted to him. But anyway, now that they're both there, Sheena and Sandoval, like what a great opportunity this would have been for Sheena to express, like yet again, how much she just misses him and reminds Tom how amazing he's been to her. Like I'm seriously getting whiplash from Sheena because just a night or two prior, she almost took Tom's head off for bringing up her past infidelities and Sandoval trying to compare the two. But now Sheena's just back to the same old bullshit excuse to just continue her role in his redemption tour. Like this season alone, Sandoval has said and reiterated pretty hurtful and shameful things to Sheena and Brock, but yet they both continue to stroke his ego and falsify his confidence by at this point drilling it in his head and ours, like how amazing a friend he's been. Like, see the writing on the wall. Like, someone could be a good friend of you years ago, but their current behavior and how they treat you shows a lot about like what they really think about your friendship, and he does not give a fuck about either one of them. So anyway, one of the next scenes is Lala's 33rd birthday and her kind of getting ready for it. And honestly, this was probably the best scene Lala has been a part of this entire season, minus the boat scene where she screamed at Sandoval. But this was her calling Sandoval up just to make sure that he knew he wasn't invited to her party. So I thought that was great, but literally that's all the nice things I'm probably going to say about Lala for the rest of this podcast. At Lala's party, Sheena continued to be Tom's little lackey and expressed to the group that, she smoothed things over with Sandoval and informed the group that she told him she missed him again and their friendship, yet again in front of Ariana. But at this point, it seems Ariana is finally starting to catch on to Sheena's antics. In her confessional, Ariana said, "Am I being gaslit?" "Yes, my queen. Yes, you are." And it was really sad to see because Ariana and Katie were on the after show, Watch What Happens Live, after this episode. And it was really sad because Andy's like, after seeing all these episodes, what do you think basically about what people have been saying, how they've been acting? And Ariana was like, I really, at the time I was going through this, she's like, maybe I just didn't see enough clues or anything. But she goes, I really thought the girls, we were like the Spice Girls. Like we were all united and we're all, going strong and rocking hard for one another. But she was surprised when, she's watching these episodes now and she's like, oh, I guess I thought completely wrong. That's not at all how it was going. But it was just kind of sad to see. And yet Ariana was, not digging people or not giving digs to people and not being like just so rude and out of pocket with her comments. Like she was so very just like, basically like I thought we were closer than that and we weren't. Like Ariana really takes the high road after all the shit that Lala's been saying in the press, on her lives. Like I have such respect for Ariana. She has a calmness and coolness about her that I could never attain. So everyone ends up flying to San Francisco for the launch party, and Daniel, Ariana's new boyfriend, joins the crew. Although he kind of sits out a lot of the pre-events, they do show them going on a date, just Daniel and Ariana, and he'll also be attending the actual launch party the following night. But all of these other events that the crew is going to, he's just kind of like sitting it out and let Ariana kind of do her own thing and not really want to get involved in too much drama, which I wouldn't want to either. But I honestly can't even reiterate how big of a bitch Lala is. After chatting it up with Ariana and Dan, it cuts to her confessional where she admits, I'm just confused to why Dan would even be interested in Ariana, like basically mocking the fact that this girl just got out of a 10-year relationship and you look at her thinking, oh yeah, she's the one. But my question for you, Lala, I'm just confused why anyone would date someone twice their age who is not the least bit attractive, who was currently married with kids at the time, just so you could have a few rides on a PJ. Like, that's more confusing to me than someone who had their entire life shattered and had not been respected or treated well or had a loyal partner, and then randomly meeting someone who treats you well, respects you, is nice to you, and tries to get to know you over long distance and a long period of time. Like, they always say things happen when you least expect it. And it's not like Ariana was still in limbo over Tom and their relationship. She was done. And Tom had already moved on from Ariana before they were even broken up. So for the last goddamn time, Lala, shove your jealous, shady opinions up your ass. Or at least send them to Daryl and not to our TV screens. So, continuing with more jaw dropping moments, Schwartz tells Sandoval he thinks he's ready to commit to moving in with him and gifts him these like tiny handcuff keychains. Like, I am all for bromances, but this honestly just makes me nauseous. And I wonder if this actually happened. I haven't really heard anything that they actually moved in together, but I'm hoping this is just a stupid little storyline and not reality. Like, oh my gosh. So Ariana and Brock then have this convo. They're just walking, the two of them, and Brock tries to like enlighten Ariana by asking if she can find some forgiveness in her heart for Sandoval for Sheena's sake. Like, Brock, take the heels off your shoes, roll them into balls, and shove them into your mouth as a ball gag. Like, how about you tell your wife to respect herself and stop making excuses for a shitty person who hurls insults at you and your family whenever he sees an opportunity to do so? Like, stop trying to fight for someone so hard who is not worth fighting for. But Ariana basically schooled him by saying it's basically outdated therapy for giving somebody that's traumatized you. She said she cares too much about Sheena to support her having friends that are not good for you and not good to you. Brock then tries to tell Ariana that it wasn't healthy for her to have like such rage towards Sandoval. Like, I literally can't with this hypocrite. Ariana again spits facts by saying no one gives a second thought to any male rage, especially in this group, but female rage, now that's a problem and needs to be addressed and eradicated. Basically, moral of the story, shut the fuck up, Brock. Maybe start by calling up your previous kids and apologizing for your male rage, hence why your ex-wife or fiance, whatever, filed like a restraining order or protection order against you. Why don't you start there before you start trying to school anybody else? Like, literally anybody. So later on in the episode, Schwartz like proposes a one night stand with Katie. I mean, although this is kind of funny and probably something easy to fall into or whatever, like I really hope she says no. Mainly for the fact that I know Joe is going to be at the launch party the following night, and I know for damn sure Schwartz is probably going to force Katie into some kind of like interaction with Joseph. So how shitty would it have been if Katie gave in and like hooked up with him, only for him to be the same old Schwartz and not have Katie's best interest at heart like less than 24 hours later? Like, some boys just never mature or change. So towards the end, Sandoval pulls Sheena aside at their like 20s dinner themed, 1920s dinner theme like outing that they had later that night because, Sheena and Tom are besties again. So Sandoval kind of asked her how he should approach like Dan being there because he knows he's going to be in attendance at the launch party the following night. But aside from the whole Dan thing, like Sheena advises Tom to apologize to Ariana for like affecting her mental health in many detrimental ways. Like I get where Sheena's trying to come from, but like Ariana has made it very clear that she wants like no verbal interaction or communication with Sandoval like whatsoever. Like if apology hasn't happened by now, like it's not going to mean anything really for him to try to do this after the fact. People have been trying to tell him for months he hasn't been remorseful and hasn't done all this, and I don't know, it's just I don't think it would mean anything at this point. But Sheena did say that, Ariana didn't freeze her eggs, go to couples therapy, buy a house, like all for herself. She did all these things for the love and future of their relationship and what they had. So Sandoval finally admits that Ariana didn't deserve what he did to her, but in his confessional, not to a person he's talking to. So next week is the season finale of Vanderpump, and besides relief that this season is ending, the reunion will air, in the weeks to follow. But something that's really bothering me is that when Ariana was on Watch What Happens Live, she admits that prior to the reunion, she had not watched any of the season's episodes. She explained during and prior to the reunion, she was literally living out her dream of performing on Broadway when she was in the lead in Chicago. And she really did not want anything to mess this up for her or put her in the wrong headspace. And I completely understand that. But what upsets me, because I think the reunion would be so much better had Ariana known everything that was going on behind her back. It's honestly probably why Lala is like so comfortable with how it played out, because I'm guessing Ariana probably didn't hold Lala's feet to the flames like we've all seen her be able to do. And Lala admitted she doesn't regret anything she said. And let's not forget, Sandoval called Lala the MVP of the reunion. But you guys, they're just this past 48 hours from when I'm actually making this recording. I don't know when this is going to post, but Vanderpump filming has been put on hold. Like, thank God, I think. I mean, they always film during the summer months, and they're reporting they're letting the cast like take a minute since dealing with all the Scandival stuff, but like you're kind of a year late for that excuse. Like filming should have been paused last summer to give them a break for that narrative, to be believable that they're trying to say now, like giving them a break from the Sandoval thing. Like we I think we've all kind of moved past it now that it's been a year later, but this whole season took place like 3 months after it happened. So I think they should have done it last year, like put it on hold, but I don't know. You might as well just say that no one likes anyone else on the cast, and we either need to figure out if we're recasting the entire cast or if the pause will be indefinite. And I kind of hope it's the latter. I think this season would have been good to just end it on.
Now on to SummerHouse. So I will be talking about episode 9, Close Encounters. So basically, this episode is Sierra and West are trying to figure out if their relationship is going anywhere. Danielle, kind of gives her opinion about Paige and Craig's relationship, and then Carl confides in Danielle about Kyle's job offer, and then confessing that Lindsay is not always the most supportive. So let's get into it. So West has a little hesitation with making things more official with Sierra because he knows that she's just signed a 2-year international modeling contract, and he wasn't really sure how that might affect their connection after the summer. I mean, Sierra still seems very into West, but she is holding her boundaries regarding kind of going all the way with him, and good for her. Like, as much as I think West has put in the work, they will go all the way when Sierra decides it's time, if ever, to go all the way. And I think West is being respectful of that, even though I think he is a little bit, impatient, but, he is a guy. So, but I just admire Sierra for not giving it into societal expectations and kind of doing things on her own terms. And she explains also a reason for this is just because she was completely embarrassed in the past with all that went down between her and Austin, which did not paint her in a very good light and didn't just look good. So I totally get why she's doing that. So Kyle and Paige, while the whole gang is out at a club during one weekend, Kyle's talking to Paige about her relationship with Craig. And Kyle said that, a few weeks back when Craig was there, he kind of like expressed like uncertainty about the next step in their relationship, as in them taking the next step, getting engaged. So Kyle asked Paige, like, do you think you're kind of like stringing him along? And Paige says, I don't at all. Like, I know I'm going to marry him, but it's going to be on my terms. And then enter Danielle with her self-entitled opinion that no one asked for, and she said, because you have his balls on the fucking mantle. There's something holding you back, and I just don't know what it is. I'm going to keep it real with you. I think you're giving him nothing. So Paige was obviously kind of like taken aback by this because she's like, you don't even really know Craig, and you damn sure don't know the inner workings of our relationship. But in her confessional, Paige kind of points out that Danielle is living on a very high, like, moral ground. I mean, she's so ready to give her unsolicited opinion on other people's relationships, but as soon as you try to give Danielle, like, any kind of feedback or reflection about her behaviors, like, Danielle won't have it. So she thought that was a bit hypocritical. So the next day, they're at the beach, and Danielle is talking to Carl and expresses that, she thinks that he seems lighter this summer and happier. And Carl confides in Danielle about being offered a potential job opportunity with the non-alcoholic Loverboy drinks that Kyle will be introducing to the public soon. So he admits to Danielle that he hasn't really spoken to Lindsay about this opportunity that was presented to him by Kyle. In Carl's confessional, he states 100%, I'm very gun shy about telling Lindsay about any kind of career opportunity. I almost have to think about it so hard before I tell her, just to prepare for what she's going to ask back, especially when it comes to going back to work for Loverboy. Last summer, working at Loverboy was a huge source of stress for our relationship. Making myself happy and also getting her approval can be challenging. Yeah, because those two things seem to be conflicting ideologies here. So then later, Paige talks to Amanda about the conversation that she had the night prior with Danielle. Um, but Paige says, but like, if we're looking on paper, Danielle has no job, no boyfriend. Paige is like, I have a job and a boyfriend, so I don't know what you're telling me that I should change in my life. And she's got a point. So Amanda says, yeah, like, what are you doing wrong? It was weird for her to come off as that judgmental. And then Paige says she's very quick to tell everyone how they should be living their lives and what they're doing in their lives that she finds to be wrong and what they should change. And then Paige also said, I feel like Danielle is foaming at the mouth to say anything about Carl and Lindsay, but she can't because of everything that like went down between the three of them last summer. But Paige says, but she can't because she knows what happened to her last year. So she's like, who can I pick apart now? And Paige says, and here I am. So basically, the end of the episode, Carl and Lindsay finally talk about the potential of him going back to work for Loverboy and basically his career goals in general. Lindsay reminds him that he promised to have a plan by the end of summer. She said, we have 3 weeks till that, and I've tried not to bug you. Yeah, right. But something that turns me on is when my man is out there crushing life. And then Carl goes, you don't think I'm crushing life? And she goes, no, I don't. We're walking into a marriage that is contractually binding all of our assets. If we have kids, I'm going to want to stay home. I need to know that my partner is bringing in money. I need that security. And then Carl goes, if you want me to go get a job, I will go get a job. And Lindsay says, the priority for you is making money for our future family. And then Carl says, I have a partner that's a go-getter in his confessional, but it's scary to have a partner who doesn't fully believe in you. And ain't that the truth. So then Lindsay goes back to their conversation. Lindsay says, I'm asking you to figure out what you want to do in life. I'm just trying to tell you what turns me on, while basically taking away his complete self-esteem. So I don't know. I just find it so weird that Lindsay thinks like the best motivator for Carl is in relation to his career goals is by telling him that like what would arouse her sexually. Like it just didn't seem very like genuine from like a partner aspect to me. It just seemed like it was too like sexually driven and not like a genuine concern for their partnership or like the well-being of their future. Like I do get Lindsay's concerns, like, obviously she's made it clear that she wants marriage, kids, like she wants it all. Important that you do need to have like security in your relationship and, the goals that you set. But on the other hand, I don't think if Carl is even afraid to bring up potential career opportunities to her, like it's very clear that he doesn't feel safe or secure in their relationship. I just think this is, a conversation. And Carl also brought up that he, wasn't aware that Lindsay would then, as soon as they had kids, wanted to become a stay-at-home mom. Like, not that he had an issue with that, but he was just like, this should have been brought up like a year and a half ago when we started dating and talking about, our real future together. Um, so yeah, that was basically all that happened in that episode. The episode ended with them having this like out of world, party at the house. It was like an alien themed party. So that's where the episode cuts. And then the next episode, episode 10, is called The Parent Trap. So it starts out with the continuation of the alien out of this world party. So this guy, Balloon Guy Joe, was invited to the party by Lindsay as initially a prospect for Gabby, who is single and, looking. But Danielle has to relentlessly and continuously remind everyone that she is also single as well and has no qualms about telling anyone that how often she fucks guys and that she likes to and just acts like the thirstiest frat boy like I've ever seen. So Danielle sees this as an opportunity for like competition and lays it on thick with Joe. And when I say thick, I mean thick, thick. So Gabby, obviously they have two totally different approaches. Gabby is just trying to play it cool and not act too desperate, which is obviously Danielle's go-to plan with him, and to basically act as desperate as possible. So they get to talking, and Danielle kind of pulls Gabby aside later on at the party just to kind of like, I think, check in with Gabby as to where she stands with, her status with flirting with Balloon Guy Joe, because Danielle is already like all in, and clearly Danielle wants to win this. So Danielle sits down with Gabby and she goes, "How's the mojo? Were you trying to flirt like at the party?" And then Gabby's like, "I don't know why everyone thinks I'm incapable of flirting." Like, obviously you can tell she's like a little irritated. And then Danielle goes, "You are actually." And there's that freaking high horse again. I mean, she's so ready to tell other people how to live their lives. Like, get your own life together, Danielle. So Danielle goes, "You're so closed off to the opportunity." And then Gabby's like, "To fuck somebody?" And then Danielle's like, "No, but sometimes it's not your perfect person," Danielle says. Like, you don't even want to try to get to know their personality. And then Gabby's like, "If I want to just kiss someone, I can grab someone and do that. But that's not what I want to do." Like, and then Gabby's like, "Well, is there anyone at this party?" And obviously she already knows the answer to that. And then Danielle's like, "Yeah, like Balloon Guy is hot as hell," Gabby says. But Danielle immediately was like, "But I'm also laying that groundwork too." Like, getting very, like, my toy. She goes, "You don't even flirt. Like, when you met Balloon Guy Joe, it was not like giving flirtation." And Gabby was just like, "Look, when I first met him, he was setting up for the party and I didn't look how I wanted to look in like a flirting situation. So I tried to play it cool. Like, not everyone has to do things the way that you do things." And Danielle was just like, "You're giving too closed off." And then Gabby's like, "Well, I don't think that's fair. Like, it's not fair for you to say, and it's not fair for you to judge." So in Gabby's confessional, she's like, "Do I need to put myself out there a little bit more?" Like, absolutely. But why are you trying to foster some kind of like competition with me? Like, that is literally the worst way to motivate me whatsoever. And it's really weird. Like, Danielle is trying to encourage Gabby to put herself out there and flirt like better or more effectively. Yet when Gabby confirms the guy that she would be interested in, which Danielle was already well aware of, Danielle basically says, "Well, I'm going to get him first and I'm winning." So are you trying to encourage her, or was this just another way that you can like make yourself feel better that you're somehow winning? I mean, Danielle, you may have won over Balloon Guy Joe, but you're really not winning at life at all. I mean, it was also just so funny because like Gabby and Lindsay were on Watch What Happens Live after this episode, and Andy Cohen was basically asking Gabby questions about the whole situation, and he asked something like along the lines of, "Do you think Joe was into Danielle or wanted to end up sleeping with her that night?" And Gabby responded, "I don't think Joe had a choice." So that was so true, and I laughed like literally out loud at this because of seriously how aggressive Danielle was in this situation. So Gabby ends up talking to Amanda a little bit about this because Amanda can tell like Gabby's kind of like upset. Gabby and Paige were both there. So Gabby basically tells them like, "Hey, Danielle was basically just like telling me that I'm self-sabotaging." And Gabby tried to say like, having standards isn't self-sabotaging, it's having standards. So Amanda's like, Danielle has a lot of opinions. And all of a sudden, Danielle like walks in and then Gabby like leaves the room. And so Paige flat out tells Danielle, like, Gabby's really upset and Danielle is confused for some reason as to why. And Paige is very lightly trying to explain it to her, like, you were just very like abrupt with her, like abrasive. And Danielle's like, well, she just didn't want to hear what I had to say. And then Amanda goes to check in on Gabby and she's like, Gabby is literally like starting to have like a complete emotional breakdown. She starts hyperventilating and Gabby's just like, I can't take it anymore. Everyone keeps acting like what's wrong with me. Everyone's looking at me like I'm the problem. And Amanda is trying to be very comforting. She goes, oh no, Gabby, like, please don't get upset. Like, you're not the problem. And taking accountability, she goes, I'm so sorry people have made you feel that way, like, including me. Like, I never want to make you feel like how you are is not okay as a person. And so they cut back to Paige continuing to talk to Danielle. And Paige is saying, look, Danielle, you have a way of saying things to people that kind of like jabs them. And this is how you are, and this is what you are. And if anyone did that to you, you'd be like, who the fuck are you? So Danielle tries to justify saying, my personality type is just more like in your face. And Paige is like, okay, but you're Gabby's crying. She's crying. And I think you should go talk to her and apologize. And then Danielle says, like, no, that's silly. Like the fact that she's even upset at, like, Danielle can't even like fathom it, which just, people that lack empathy just bug me. But Paige is like, you made your friend cry. Like, and Danielle is in denial. She's like, I didn't make her cry. And Paige is like, I'm telling you right now, she is crying and it's because of the shit you said to her. And I'm bringing it to your attention and you're saying it's stupid that she's crying. Like, and then Paige starts to lose it on Danielle being like, you think you're some kind of moral compass. Like, who the fuck do you think you are? And Paige then ends up heading into the bathroom to check on Gabby, who's essentially closer with Danielle. She's more Danielle's friend than Paige's, but Paige and Amanda are the ones that are being comforting to her. But like also during this conversation, Danielle tries to spin it and like justify herself by saying, well, as a founder and CEO, I recognize like basically what people lack in their behaviors so I can figure out how to work with them efficiently. And Paige like retorts being like, she's not your employee. She's your friend and she's hurt by your approach. And then they cut to Paige's confessional, and this is probably the best line of the whole episode. She goes, I'm sorry, founder and CEO of what? So let's also not forget either that last summer, Gabby dropped a bomb on the group saying that her ex-boyfriend had cheated on her with Danielle. So this probably hits even harder for Gabby, hence why she doesn't even want to entertain the whole like competition aspect, like vying for men's attentions with Danielle. Like Danielle definitely has a superiority complex. Like for some reason she thinks she knows like what's best and has no problem telling people what's wrong in their relationships and how they should be acting when it comes to men. Like I've never really been a fan of Danielle, but ever since she was like dumped by her previous boyfriend like Robert, she's been like overly unbearable and also such an embarrassment. I watched her during Winter House this past season and she was literally so cringy to watch. At the time, I did try to give her some grace by being like, oh, she just got dumped by her serious, like, several years long relationship and is probably hurting. But knowing the type of person Danielle is and has proven herself to be, I literally just think that's her personality. She was so clingy and desperate in Winter House with the whole Alex situation and honestly looked like a fucking stage 5 clinger. Also, during the Winter House reunion, Danielle didn't express any like reflection of her behavior or how she didn't come off very likable, but like doubled down on her tacky behavior, which also really irked me. And I also think the way Danielle felt so betrayed last season with the whole like Carl and Lindsay situation and the fact that she did get a lot of support, like especially from the girls in the house last season, I think she thought coming into SummerHouse this year, she was definitely on her high horse with like a serious false sense of entitlement. So after giving the audience like an entire porno naked scene of her hooking up with Balloon Guy, she goes into Gabby's room the next morning and acts like she had nothing to really apologize for and simply says, "Oh, I want to give you the biggest hug." How about a big apology? Like Gabby had a complete breakdown, and for anyone saying Gabby like overreacted or blew it out of proportion, like Gabby stated on Watch What Happens Live that she is not a crier at all. She cries maybe once every like 2 years. So she said that it was just like a buildup of emotions over like a long period of time, and it all just like came out at once. Like I'm a crier. I cry at absolutely everything, but I can totally understand that people that aren't criers and like when they finally do allow those like guarded emotions, it can be like a flood. So I did really feel bad for her in that moment. And like when you're that upset, you really can't like pull yourself together very easily because it's just, built up over such a long period of time. Oh, at the party, Kyle and Carl are talking about the conversation that Carl and Lindsay had about him possibly working at Loverboy again for the new alcoholic drink. So Carl explained that Lindsay really needs him to figure out his career and he needs to hustle, which would in turn Lindsay on. Well, Lindsay thinks motivating Carl to set up, his career path would I've already discussed benefit her arousal impact, but it was initially brought up to Carl that way. But then Lindsay, also stated once they got married and wanted to have kids right away, then she'd be a stay-at-home mom, and the lack of Carl's career path will seriously hinder that want for Lindsay. So Carl seemed confused because they had never really discussed the logistics of Lindsay taking a break from contributing any income once they had kids. So Carl seemed to think this topic should have been like discussed way prior to, which I agree. And that puts even more like pressure on him, which is understandable. So after the weekend ends, Carl goes to visit his mom and stepdad of, I think he's been a stepdad for a couple years now. And his stepdad was honestly spitting facts. Like, it may be hard to hear for Carl, but sometimes you need like someone in your life that you trust and who knows you and can add some perspective outside of your bubble sometimes. So this is part of their conversation that they had. So Carl says, I don't share every nitty gritty fight we've had, but back in May, Lindsay and I had a huge fight. And he said he went to his mom's for a few days and, they were concerned about what, Carl explained the fight was about, I'm assuming. So Carl then says, I wish I'd never told my mom that we had a fight, he adds, but I'm human and I need people to talk to. There was a time when I literally didn't talk to anyone. I lived in fear that if I shared something and Lindsay found out, I would get in trouble. Hey, I mean, this is understandable on both parts. Like, I've had arguments with my spouse and in turn would confide in my family sometimes and let them know in the moment because I would be like so overwhelmed with emotions and would just need to like get it out somehow to like, especially some people in my life that I trust, and know just want the best for me. But I also know that in the moment when like tensions are high and you need that like verbal release, after things calm down and like settle, sometimes you do regret like sharing such raw emotions in the moment because, in the moment things always feel that much more intense. So I do get where Carl is coming from in that aspect and, like regretting that. But his stepdad says you get married because of the relationship you have. If the relationship you have isn't working, getting married isn't going to solve that. Only people that have a healthy relationship should be thinking about marriage. It's much harder and so much more painful to end a marriage than to get it right before you get married. I really did feel for Carl because he was really trying to protect his relationship with Lindsay and, didn't divulge too much information about their issues, but, it's quite obvious he's afraid of Lindsay and her rage and her judgment, and it can put someone in that kind of relationship like in a really scary place. Like you have fear of your partner finding out any of your concerns, so you don't really feel safe talking to friends about it, and you also don't feel safe like bringing these issues or concerns up to your partner. Like that alone is a major red flag, and I really felt that Carl was between a rock and a hard place. I'm in no way like a Lindsay fan, but I do feel that they both deserve happiness. But, this relationship is clearly not meant to be, but obviously it's so much easier said on the outside looking in as opposed to like actually being in it. So I just want to also mention really quick, Lindsay, like I mentioned earlier, was on Watch What Happens Live with Gabby following the previous episode. And at the end of the episode, Andy always does like a segment, Watch What Happens 5, and it's, different for every show. But he let the door open for Lindsay to redeem her like inappropriate actions and have been airing this current season. And so he asked her, saying, what 5 things would you do differently looking back on this summer and moving forward? And this softball of a question and this opportunity for Lindsay went way over her head. And she didn't even mention at all any behavioral regrets that she had for her actions or her words or her shadiness or her lack of respect. And I think the closest point she made, reflecting on her 5 things, was looking out for more red flags in a relationship. And I know damn sure she was referring to Carl's red flags and not any of her own. And even Andy Cohen was like, okay, not at all what I was expecting you to say, but okay. Like, same, Andy, same.
All right, you guys, we've made it. We are doing the third episode of SummerHouse in this podcast because I thought I would be done with this sooner, but I took a couple extra days, so I ended up watching the latest episode. So here we go. This is episode 11, Witchin and Bitchin. So let me see where I want to begin here. So I know I was just talking about Carl from the last recap and stuff, but I know a lot of people, I've been seeing a lot of people thinking that like Carl's approach during this summer was like really manipulative and just setting things up in a way to make him look like the good guy. But I really don't think that's what's going on. Like Carl does not have the best track record, but I also don't think he's like that calculated. I think when you're in like a semi-toxic relationship and you were kind of afraid of your partner in a sense, like what's so wrong with having a real conversation with your close family? Also, I think in relationships that have like major issues like theirs did, I hate to say it like this, but sometimes you do need like some proof. If Carl hadn't been shown having deep conversations with his family about some of the relationship concerns, I don't think a damn person would have been able to see Carl's side to this, like due to how Lindsay would spin it or project consistently and firmly that she was the only victim in this situation. We've already seen her gaslight the fuck out of him on camera, so can you imagine how much worse she can be when cameras aren't rolling? Sometimes you need evidence to back up your truth. Also, I know a lot of reality stars like have a lot of personal info saved from the views of the camera and not shared. But this conversation Carl had was about his and Lindsay's relationship, which, to be honest, is and has been a part of the show for many years. They've showed their friendship, their initial hookup, the first time they were dating, when they came back together dating and their engagement and their fights. So why is it so wrong for Carl to have like a genuine conversation with his family about this very topic? Okay, that was just my little thing about Carl before I got into it. So, okay, this week's episode, Paige and Craig have a little picnic and they talked about their future. West was grilled by Lindsay about his status with Sierra, and he admits that he's still like talking to other girls, even though he's been like romancing Sierra. Jesse shares that he's going in for his 5-year cancer checkup after next week and understandably is anxious about it. Carl gives Lindsay basically the Cliff Notes version of the chat he had with his parents, but after talking about it with Kyle and Amanda, he was advised to give Lindsay all the details before she would eventually see it on TV when it aired, what actually happened and what was said. So let's get into the beginning. So Paige and Craig have a chat about where they see themselves in the future of their relationship. I admire that Paige is self-reliant and steadfast in her boundaries and her expectations of their relationship. And I know that she loves Craig, but I do think that she should be a little more accepting or open to the engagement happening soon. She tries to reassure Craig that I know I want my future with you. I want you to be my husband and the father of my kids, but I just can't fathom like starting that journey or kicking things off into motion yet. Like, you guys have been dating for 2 years. You're in your 30s, and I just think getting engaged does not mean you will walk down the aisle in a month and need to pop out babies within a year. But I do think committing to that step is, for now, the only reassurance Craig will need. Like, he said he's 35 and he wants to have his first kid by the time he's 40, and I think that's a completely realistic expectation. Like, if Paige is so sure that he's the one, then make it like official. Like, you could spend 3 years planning your wedding and you don't have to decide about where you move just yet. But if Paige is so unsure about her future, but the one sure thing is that she knows she wants it to be with Craig, like, don't wait too long that, you're gonna miss your chance and miss, you know, time that like the next step that you're kind of fearing. Like sometimes you have to just go for it if you have like that gut feeling that this person is the one, even after a couple years of dating. So that's just my opinion about that. But I love Craig. I love Craig so much. Oh my god. If Paige doesn't marry him, oh, I don't know. Then comes the recap that Carl had with his parents about their current, status of their relationship amid the nasty fights they've been having. Carl was trying to talk to Lindsay about it, and this was painful to watch because Carl wasn't direct. He was leaving a lot of details out and just skirting around the whole issue. Like Carl's parents were concerned about them getting married based on the significant level of fights they've been having and been informed about. But Carl is flat out terrified of Lindsay, and I don't want to put any labels on the relationship, but this type of behavior is indicative of emotional abuse within a partnership. You're terrified to be honest with your partner because you're frightened of their reaction and the aftermath of that. However, Carl could have like formatted this conversation in such a more reassuring and fluid manner. Also, given Lindsay's like abandonment issues, he should have figured out how to be direct and stern, but like reassuring. He doesn't even reference anything that was said, but tried to assure Lindsay, but I'm still going to do what I want. And the phrasing just made it seem like they don't, they said, don't marry Lindsay, she's the problem, when in reality, they were just concerned if the relationship is not in a good place prior to the wedding. A binding marriage is not going to solve those issues. And of course, if you leave stuff out, any girl really, but especially Lindsay, will fill in the blanks and like assume the worst. So then the next scene was Lindsay's bridal shower. Oh, God. Yeah. Knowing what we know, it was just awkward. But if I had $1 every time Lindsay said, I never thought I would be here or I never thought this day would come, I could buy a couple of bottles of champagne with that money. And in order to just watch the awkwardness and fakeness of this shower, in my opinion. So, like mother, like son, Carl's mom was so painfully awkward during the shower. After mingling at the beginning of the shower, Carl's mom is sitting next to Lindsay, when they all have to be seated, and Lindsay seems to be like in a really deep conversation with her stepmom who's sitting on the other side of her. And in the middle of their conversation, Carl's mom like awkwardly puts her hand on Lindsay's shoulder. I don't know if this is because they hadn't yet even said hi or greeted each other, which would be very strange that neither one of them sought out the other prior to taking their seats, or if this was Carl's mom's way of like reassuring Lindsay after Lindsay had mentioned in her chat that her and Carl were having some issues. But it was so awkward. Lindsay eventually brings up to Carl's mom that Carl told Lindsay that his parents expressed concerns about them getting married so soon. Now I know where Carl gets it from because she was not, it seemed like, and maybe it was just editing, but it seemed like she was not able to articulate anything of substance as like Carl's mom just kept hugging Lindsay like 27 times. Like all you had to say is, we want the best for both of you. It came from a place of love and concern, and there's no shame in waiting a little while until the relationship is stronger. Instead, she just continued to hug Lindsay and just say things like, you have to love that boy, you know, after Lindsay tried to make it seem like their main issue was because Lindsay has never dated anyone in active addiction. Like, okay, Lindsay, nothing going wrong in your relationship is because of your aggressive, abhorrent behavior and reactions. Okay. But it was also just sad because Carl showed up and he was being like so supportive and so complimentary of Lindsay, and honestly in no way seemed like he had a diabolical plan to pull the rug out from her and call everything off just a few weeks after this. That's the vibe I got. So anyway, we cut to the weekend and West and Jesse are driving up together and just kind of like exchange information about their lives. So Jesse says, on Tuesday, I have my 5-year checkup, which is a big deal in the cancer community. He's a 2-time cancer survivor. And he said if you make it past 5 years, the chances of it reoccurring are extremely low. So it's a big milestone, and I'm trying not to let it get me down, but obviously it's all I can think about, which is completely understandable. And I would be terrified to be in that situation as well. Just, it's not knowing. Oh, but then West admits to Jesse that he's afraid to stop keeping his options open, really, if he found the right girl. And Jesse seemed confused and questions, well, aren't you kind of currently in that place with Sierra right now? And West just says, and kind of avoids the answer. So once at the house, Lindsay starts grilling West, like, are you talking to other girls? Are you and Sierra exclusive? And West admits, no, they're not exclusive. I just think it's like a weird pigeonhole to be like, we're not having sex, but we're exclusive. And that, yes, he is still corresponding with other girls, but it wasn't really clarified if he's sleeping with other girls or just like going on dates, or if it's just like flirty banter through text and when he's like out at the bar. But it doesn't seem good because Sierra is admittedly like more and more into West like each week. But, I see it from both sides here. But finally, the end of the episode, Carl opens up to Kyle and Amanda well, Carl opens up to Kyle, and Amanda just kind of inserted herself in the conversation, and here is how it went. Amanda asked, when you don't tell Lindsay everything, is it to protect her feelings? In regards to, Carl said that he left a lot of information out about the talk with his parents, and he didn't want to tell Lindsay the whole thing, but he's obviously having like a lot of anxiety about it. And in my opinion, I think kind of making it out to be a little bit worse than it really is. Like it was just kind of honest, but it wasn't anything like bashing Lindsay or anything. It's just a place of concern. But anyway, Amanda asks, when you don't tell Lindsay everything, is it to protect her feelings? And Carl says, yes, of course. Concerns are okay, but if anybody had concerns, it's my stepfather. He's an ordained minister and he's married people for 35 years. And as it stands, if he was doing our premarital counseling, he would not marry us. And Amanda goes, how does that make you feel? And Carl says, fucking horrible. Carl confesses that he didn't tell Lindsay exactly what his stepdad said. And Amanda asks, but isn't she going to see this? And at the end of the day, Lindsay's going to find out what was said, and it's better coming from you than later down the road. So Carl was thinking this is just way too hurtful. And he says, but I don't want to hurt her any more than she's already been hurt by her fucking biological mom who abandoned her. So then Kyle comes in, kind of being the voice of reason for Carl, and he goes, I honestly don't think it's hurtful. Your mom's coming at it from where any mom would. And this is not a Lindsay versus Carl parent scenario. This is loving parents having concerns about the well-being of their son's mental health and his future. I mean, Carl then admits, obviously I need to talk to her, but there's so much other shit on our plates. It's really obvious Carl is like completely overwhelmed and scared. But since the three of them were talking, they were all late to the family dinner at the house, and Lindsay immediately questioned like why it took Carl so long to come down. So again, Carl should have just taken a minute and been like, let's eat and then we'll have a talk. But instead, Lindsay cannot like wait another millisecond to know what's being said. So she asks if they can go talk right now. So they awkwardly leave the table without saying a word and leaving everyone to wonder like, what the hell is going on? So they go inside and Carl says, I don't want any secrets from you. When the conversation with my parents play out on TV, so you're not like caught off guard, I just want to make sure that you know what Lou told me. He said, as it stands right now, if you were a couple that I was working with, I would not marry you. But they both love you. That's not a question. I should have just told you from the beginning, Carl admits. I just wanted to talk to you and make sure we were both on the same page. And I just want to make sure that we're clear. My mom and stepdad fucking love you. I just wish I had told you sooner. Lindsay appears like very confused and hurt and begins to get defensive and starts cutting Carl off and snidely retorts at every little thing that he's trying to say to reassure Lindsay and just come clean. Like it's painfully obvious his fear of Lindsay's reaction and wrath. It's ironic though because he's trying to tread lightly and not hurt her feelings or awaken the beast, but by him fumbling his words and not communicating effectively, he's gonna get the reaction from her that he's trying so much to avoid at all cost. He should have just said it clearly with confidence and sternness in his reassurance. He's like a little scared kid admitting to his angry mom that he broke the lamp. I don't know. That's just how I saw it. So while this conversation is happening inside, Jesse is being asked about the dates he's been going on the past week and if there are any serious prospects. He admits no, there's no one serious yet, and he's just kind of playing the field, but if the right girl came along, he would pursue that option 100%. And Sierra, like a bat out of hell, blurts out that Jesse is coming off and giving like trash bag vibes. Jesse is clearly hurt by this comment, and although I do like Sierra, I think this comment was really unnecessary, but I totally think she's projecting onto Jesse. Like Jesse's handsome, charming, and because he's playing the field and dating around, like who does that remind Sierra of? Mr. Austin Kroll, minus the handsome part. The diabolical fuckboy himself. I think the only difference here is that Jesse doesn't seem to be like leading girls on like Austin did with Sierra, while he's also just being like a dickhead to them on the side. Like I don't think Jesse is making these girls think they're more than what they are and that he wants to go all in and be serious with them and then just kind of ghost them. So I do hope Sierra ends up apologizing to him. I don't really think Sierra even knew about the whole cancer appointment thing. So I'm sure she's going to realize it later this weekend. And I just hope she apologizes because I think she is totally projecting. So on Watch What Happens Live, Andy Cohen revealed that there's about 5 more episodes of SummerHouse over like a 2-week span until it's the inevitable engagement breakup. And he said that the last 5 episodes, Carl and Lindsay get into horrific fights for the remaining 2 weeks of summer. So get your popcorn ready and enjoy getting activated by either Carl or Lindsay or Danielle. So that's going to do it, guys. I can't wait to talk to Hannah about the Vanderpump finale and reunion, possibly, but I just can't wait to catch up with her. And as always, thank you guys so much for stopping in and listening. I hope that maybe you agree or disagree with my recaps, my opinions, but yeah, this is just fun. So I just appreciate you guys stopping by and listening. All right, until next time.